Well, you have a book coming out really soon. It'll be out, excuse me, by the time this podcast episode is
Tomorrow.
released. Tomorrow. Is the Great Commission still great? What prompted you to write this book? Tell us a little bit about that.
So here's the book. And it's kind of an interesting story. It's probably 20 years ago. I spoke at a church outside Philadelphia. And I was sharing some of the amazing things that God is doing around the world. And afterward, an elderly lady was one of the people that came up to talk to me after the service. And she literally had a few tears coming down her cheeks. And she said, I've been praying and giving for years, but it's like God spoke to me today and said, your sacrificial involvement is making a big difference. And I was encouraged, but it got me thinking, okay, so here she had been for years praying and giving, but wondering if it was really making a difference. I wonder what other misperceptions people might have that could be demotivating them, or at least preventing them from participating as wholeheartedly and as enthusiastically as they would otherwise be doing. So I started actually collecting some ideas and having conversations with different people in my travels and asking, so what do you think are some of the myths about missions out there, or at least things that people are exaggerating in their minds or underappreciating that might be undermining their participation and enthusiasm. And then I did a survey, an informal survey, and about 120 people participated. Some of them were mission pastors, others were rank and file believers in churches across the country, others were missionaries. And I distilled the list to this final group of 8 concepts that I think need clarifying so that people will have a clearer, more distinct, picture of our participation in this final lap of the Great Commission race. That's the background story. So, a couple of years ago, maybe it was one of these pandemic blessings, the silver lining in an otherwise bleak picture. I just started taking these conversations and the survey and started fleshing them out. And a couple of missions pastors have already said that this is perhaps one of the best and most helpful missions books that they've read in quite a few years. And so I'm hoping it'll be a blessing to churches. It's organized around the idea of having small group discussions on these perceptions. I'm not trying to set up straw men, Kristen or John, just, to, present only one side of the equation. I think there's a kernel of truth to many of these ideas. And I'm trying to help people process those ideas in a biblical fashion. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure. You've identified 8 myths. Can you highlight one or two of those for us?
Yeah, so I think one of the most foundational is, what I could call a side salad perception about the Great Commission. And when I say Great Commission, I'm not just referring to Matthew 28, 18 to 20. I'm thinking of the whole biblical narrative about the big picture of what God is doing in the world. But, a Barna survey was done just a couple of years back, where they found that 51% of churchgoers in America have no clue what the Great Commission is. They don't even recognize the expression. And then there's another 37% apparently that if you give them a list of references, they're not going to know which reference represents the Great Commission as we know it in Matthew. And I think that we in the North American church are in danger of starting to become missionless believers, in the sense that we kind of think nothing significant happened between the resurrection and the ascension, when actually Jesus had 5 different, likely distinct conversations with 5 different groups of people, emphasizing what he wants us to be doing during the church age. And it's very likely that the actual Great Commission, the primary one of the 5 that we think of as the Great Commission, was given to 500 people on the mountain there in Galilee. So I think just seeing missions as core to who we are and what God has for us to do is really, really key. It's not a side salad. It's not peripheral.